Welcome back to the Occult Rejects. Tonight, or tonight, whatever you want to call it, depends on where you are. We are joined by Daniel, host of Know Thyself, a podcast exploring self-knowledge through Hermeticism, alchemy, natural law, astrology, and the broader mystery traditions. His work asks a timeless question that feels especially important right now. What does it actually mean to know yourself in a world full of noise, distraction, and borrowed identities? Even he himself was saying prior to the show, and I do agree, I think a lot of the topics that we both cover, both cross. So I thought he'd be a great guest to bring on, and hopefully a show that my listeners can get something out of. But before we introduce him, let me introduce the other rejects on the panel. And we got Judith the Loon joining us. What is going on, Judith? How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for having me. Welcome, Daniel. It's always nice to be on the panel with Headless. And Nick, thank you for having me. You could find me at YouTube and on X as The Loon, and on I think Streamster. Is that right? Spreaker on my podcast.
All right.
Oh yeah, awesome. I'm glad you finally made that. And we got the man himself, the Headless Giant. What is going on, sir? How are you?
You do it. You can find me at The Headless Giant on YouTube, also on Twitter at The Headless Giant, and also on Instagram. And today I just got done doing a debate with Eric Clausen from Platonism, and I was arguing that Plato has been a massive, bad thing for society, and he was coming from the opposite direction. So I know it's a controversial take. You might enjoy the episode. I think a lot of people might have Plato wrong. So go check that out. And tomorrow I've got the trialogues with Ethan Indigo and Ricardo Calvadio. We're going to be doing a round trip around the world. So it'll be a great time.
Nice. Definitely go check out that thing he was just talking about with Plato. He brought up some interesting things that I never really thought about. So go check it out for sure. And Headless, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. I know you just did a show. Daniel, my man, I'm so glad, like I said, to get you on. Please let everybody know anything that you want to plug, any websites.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And again, it's such an honor to be on this show, your show with you individuals, and as well as your community. It's such a rich and strong community. I even reading the comments sometimes. It will blow my mind and make my face melt. I'm like, it's so hard. Sometimes I'm paying attention to your guys' show, the recording of it, reading the comments, and I'm like, this is crazy. I almost have to take it one at a time. But yeah, it's such an honor to be here with each and every one of you. And yeah, I'm my second favorite host of the Know Thyself podcast. My partner Eduardo couldn't be here today. He's a little bit more of an adult. He's got a job and a family and everything, so he was unable to make it. But I was just like, let's do it. So next time we connect, I'll definitely be. It will definitely be the both of us. But yeah, you can find us at the Know Thyself podcast, and it's the one with the sun logo. There's another Know Thyself podcast that came later. And so, yeah, it's the one with the sun logo. And yeah, we cover anything in the esoteric. And it's just me and my friend that we've been friends since we were 13. We were, skating together. We were in a punk band called Clinton's Pet Donkey. And we made our way all the way to esoteric discovery together. And so it really is kind of just like a conversation between two friends. And we really do kind of just try to dilate everything down and get it to something that's understandable and simple, not watering it down, but just through the conversation. Sometimes I think we do better than others, but either way, it's kind of fun because we're still just two best friends having a conversation. So it's always a good time. But again, so excited to be here with you guys.
No, I'm glad you made it, man. I'm glad you made it. I do have a couple of just basic questions that maybe we get into before. I know Headless had a talking point I was very interested in. For people discovering you for the first time, your show for the first time, or whatever, what does Know Thyself mean to you? And why that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it really just kind of comes down to the core aspect of everything comes from you. And so this aspect of everything that's in the external, everything that's mirrored is a projection of internal patterns that are in operation. And so it really kind of comes to that idea of, I know I spent so much years of my life trying to put out external fires, and I was always like, oh, it's just if I get into a different relationship, or maybe if my car was blue and it wasn't white, shit wouldn't be happening like this. And it's always, we always try to change the outside when it's all, you know, it's all coming from within. And it's also such this beautiful journey, especially in times that we find ourselves in now, because that internal security is all you really have. That internal connection to, I like to call it the OG, the original generator, the source, right? That's the only true security, you know. Like, even it's like kind of funny when you even think about it. All security that's sold to you is kind of bullshit, because it's all gonna, like, you know, it's all gonna decay and die. You know, there's only one source of that eternal, and then like the connection to that is within yourself. And also, you know, I think everybody is brilliant, authentic, and pretty rad when they really express their own personal unfoldment. You know, we have so much aspects right now of, like, you know, I even see like my niece and nephew who are so creative, and they're just like looking at like, oh, this TikTok dance is what's popular, so we have to do that TikTok dance. And I'm like, homeboys, what the hell are you doing? We have this like aspect of all of this creativity, and we're just playing, you know, we're just playing like tag and like mirroring all of these kind of components. And, you know, I just think that that authentic unfoldment is really how that universal life force learns itself. And so I kind of even think that your free will decision here is to determine how much that universal life force is going to understand itself within you. And that's where your decision really comes in. Like, how much am I going to let this unfoldment and this blossoming happen? Or am I going to just, you know, go home straight and just put on that new Netflix and just like let that show run, that reel? And then like people ask me about the show and I'll be like, I don't even like that show. I don't even know why I'm watching it, but it's just like doing it just to do it. It's like, what a perfect opportunity to, you know, connect to yourself. So yeah, you know, it's kind of one of those things that I just kind of realized that I didn't really know anything internally in myself. And you know, I didn't really have any kind of spiritual direction until I was like 25 years old. Prior to that, like, I was really into like, you know, like conspiracy and like who's really running the world. I could describe the prison cell to you. I could tell you how every bar was put and like, oh, this person's doing this. And like, my friends are like, thanks, dude, but like, we're just trying to like fucking bowl right now. Like, you know, like, we just like, you don't have to like tell us all this negative stuff, because there was no solution to any of it. You know, there was no like, oh, this is how you're going to overcome it. It's just like, oh, you're screwed. You're, you know, So it was one of these like things that like through that process, and even kind of like learning about, you know, like the occult organizations, like the Freemasons and stuff like that. It slowly kind of opened. And then, you know, it just took like a little bit of a mushroom trip with a gypsy girl to say like, God is energy. And like, first time, not the first time I ever heard it, but for some reason that was like the moment that blew my goddamn mind. And then the whole process started. And like, I really feel like from that moment on was like the first time I had like a true serious thought in my life, you know? And so it's just been this like aspect of like unfolding it through this process. And, you know, I think one of the unique things about it is like, I'm pretty I was pretty elementary with all these subjects. So I really had to go like step by step. And so through the process of the podcast, I think there's like confidence, because people are like, oh, I don't think I can understand alchemy. I'm like, listen, if I can understand alchemy, you can understand alchemy. Like, it's one of those things, like, it's just like, you know, it really kind of assisted with it being such a fresh thing. So, you know, I don't know if I like answered that question directly, but you know, that's kind of where that Know Thyself vibe kind of came from.
Very interesting. Well, I wanted to ask about the Delphic Maxims. So the 147 Delphic Maxims of Stobius is considered to be like this basis for all of the morality that you find in the Bible, like the 10 Commandments are based off of them and all the rest of these things. And hardly anybody knows about them. I love Know Yourself, but there's so many other really good ones in that list that I think a lot of people are missing. And actually, if you're thinking about it from a ritual magician perspective, like, these are essential to really understanding ritual magic, because in knowing yourself and actually having these different parts of yourself integrated through these different, you know, these verses, you could actually achieve so much more and get hung up a lot less when you're talking about that. That kind of goes into theurgy, right? So what do you have a favorite Delphic maxim other than Know Yourself? Or,
you know, it's like, it's so funny that you bring that up, because before I was like into this, I was like a school teacher, but at one time I had restaurants and food trucks, and we actually like painted those on the wall. And my business partner was like, he was like, not in, he was like, what the hell is this? And like me and my chef were like, oh, this was like so badass. And, you know, yeah, it is. It's like, it is that source of all of it. And, you know, like off the top of the head, like I'm trying to kind of think like, you know, like almost like that aspect that you were saying, like nobody really knows about this, as this is like the seed that like all of these trees were like birthed from. It blew my mind that Know Thyself, like there wasn't another podcast of Know Thyself when we first got started. Like another one came up, but like I threw that name out there as like, oh, there's no way that Know Thyself isn't taken. And it wasn't taken. And I was like completely blown away, because I was like, man, that should have been like the first podcast name that was taken, you know?
Right.
So it really is interesting. I mean, I think you can like expand that out too, of just like, you know, how everybody just has like this space that they kind of get to when it comes to like ancient scripture. And that's as far back as they go, you know, and you're like, oh, it goes back to the Sumerians. It goes back to all of these kind of things. And so, yeah, it's a really, really fascinating thing. But that was kind of the core of everything, you know. And Know Thyself is just always stuck out in this way of it's like memorization, and it's like accessibility to like come up into my conscious mind and be able to like pull it up into my conscious mind active, you know. There's so many times I'm reading books on like the Kabbalah, or like, you know, like reading something by Blavatsky, and I'm like tuning into it and like, you know, picking up the vibration, which will open up pathways later. But like you and me could be chilling at the coffee shop and you'd be like, hey man, like what did you just read in that last chapter? And I'd be like, dude, like I don't know. Like, so Know Thyself always stuck out as this thing that like always would like penetrate through my memory. It didn't matter like where I was. This was like this motto that would always kind of come through. And so that one has been the dearest one to me. But you know, you're right though. There's so much of a core there. And what you spoke about too, with like the aspect of like magician work in like ceremonial, you're so right. It's the process of Know Thyself. And I think that that's what's so fascinating, because like all subjects, like all like roads lead back to Rome in it, because it's like every subject is kind of Know Thyself when you really kind of get into it, you know. So it expands out. But I would be kind of curious to see if one sticks out to you or anybody else, Headless Giant, because I can just feel it that you're just a wrath of wisdom, and so I'm like all ears on that one.
Again, like you've got Know Thyself, and then number 8 in the 147 is be yourself, right? So that's sort of like the authenticity in action. You've got to be able to know and then to be yourself as this sort of you know, paradigm that you sort of exist in. Half of everything we do is the inner world, and the other half is the outer world. And far too often, we end up letting one side or the other take control of our lives instead of actually having a nice harmonious balance between the two. And, you know, actually knowing yourself and being yourself is essential to having that authenticity. And then number 81, this is one of my favorites: detest disgrace. You're not going to find that in the 10 Commandments. This is like putting it right out there in your face. You've got to actually be able to move to the place where you can detest the things that you really feel disgraceful about yourself, so that you can get out of those cycles that you find yourself in over and over and over again. It's not about destroying yourself, but it's about, you know, developing that sense to where you can finally exit the cycles that you find yourself in. But those 147 Delphic maxims are really important. It was a shame that they destroyed the Apollo temple that they were written on. But I think it's still, even after having the destruction, Know Thyself seems to be eternal, and it sticks with humanity, even though, you know, it hasn't been written on those walls in a long, long time.
You know, and I've seen this on other episodes with your conversations. You've got such a reference in your mind of like what you can recall, of like just being able to like recall it. And it's happened like on multiple times when I've watched you on this channel. It's just like, it's really, really one of those things that's like admirable. And to be able to pull that out is so fascinating and inspiring. And what you pulled out with that 81 is so important, you know, going to that space of being uncomfortable. You know, I think there's a kind of a component when like the new age movement is almost like is a lot of like cupcakes and rainbows sometimes. And, you know, it's like, you got to kind of push through that. You know, that source of everything, it comes from the dark, you know, light is the reflection of it. And so, yeah. And like, I think that was kind of how I was really like, blessed to stumble upon the secret teachings of all ages and like occultism, because when I first got into spirituality, like I was crystal munching. Like it was just like everything was an angel number. Everything was like, you know, it was kind of the thing of it's just like so high vibe, which is great, but like there's opposite ends of everything. You know what I mean? And there's density, and so it was really nice to kind of get that awareness, especially when it comes to like exploring yourself. You know, like those are the things that are really part of the shadows, the things that you ultimately absolutely detest. And then, you know, I wanted to touch on that being yourself. I think that's why like bees are such a magical animal, you know, like it'd be like, it's like they like that aspect of how they share that word with it of like being, and like how bees don't make sense. Like when they like break it down with like the wings carrying it, everything that they like magically do. You know, like I really think that component of like being yourself allows for that magic to come in. Cause like, I think it's a lot easier just to be like a fly, like, you know, floating around shit, like especially nowadays, you know?
Yeah. Oh, the bees are so important, especially when it comes to the Hermeticism and the Oracle at Delphi.
Oh, for sure.
The Melissae were the attendant female priestesses of the Oracle at Delphi. So this is like at the very core of it is the idea of honey and bees and Melissae, you know, that means honey. And so these were like the bee priestesses. And so there's this really strange bond between how human society works and how bees work, and really central to a lot of the theology in ancient Greece was the bee. Yeah. And, you know, everybody thinks of these myths with, you know, bull-headed man and, you know, centaurs and all the rest of this stuff. But really at the central core of their theology at Delphi was this bee priestess class that ruled for, you know, centuries, if not millennia. So, yeah. I mean, it was central to their understanding. You could find the bee burial ground. It was a beehive burial ground for the king who invaded Troy, right? And so even within the structures, you find that bee popping up over and over again, and that be thyself. It's like bees have no choice but to be themselves. And in essence, like they're kind of whispering that to you, is like, you've got to do what you're meant to do.
Yeah, man. Like, who would have known that Winnie the Pooh was on some esoteric shit? Like when he was just like shoving his hand in the honey and just, like slapping his face on it. Like, you know, like everything is a different lens. Everything's a different lens.
Yo, even Charlie Brown, I think, was occult.
Oh yeah, you know, that's like what's so funny.
Look at his shirt. It's the Aquarius symbol. It's yellow, which goes with air. Yeah. They call him a blockhead. Cube is the symbol for Saturn, and Aquarius is associated.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I saw a 4chan comment.
And Brown. Sorry, Brown's associated with Saturn as well.
Oh, for sure. That's totally got it. And I saw a 4chan post once about Teletubbies and like Atlantis and Lemuria. I was like dizzy for like 2 weeks after that. Like it took my feet from under me, and it was just like so crazy. Like, oh no, they're a civilization after a reset, and like this was already built, and they just showed up here, kind of like the Aztecs were like, we didn't build this stuff, we came into this, and it was like so crazy. And once you started like watching it, especially like the magical episodes that came like every 7, it was like all the aspects of like astrological connection. Yeah, you know, it's so interesting when you get that lens to start looking through the esoteric. Nothing is quite the same afterwards.
Right. Right. So there is that aspect of like reset happening. And we just did a recent episode about the age of Aquarius and how we're sort of in that transitional phase into this Aquarian age. Again, back to Charlie Brown. It's sort of, are we going to keep having the football pulled out from under us in this Aquarian age, or are we going to actually advance and ascend in some way through knowledge or whatever? I mean, you face reset after reset. Everybody's scared of it now. What are your thoughts on the Aquarian age?
You know, were you going to say something though? You were about to say something up top.
No, go.
Yeah, no. Absolutely. And I think what's so interesting about like the precision of the equinoxes is like that transition period is so long. And so like we are in this like Pisces to Aquarius stage, and again that whole Aquarius nature, like the Aquarian sign is so interesting because it's like the network of the group, but it's also like the defining of the individual within that group. And so that whole idea of like blossoming and exploring the individual components of the self, I think is the biggest thing in the age of Aquarius. Like our communities are the best when it's made up of like strong individuals, not aspects of like, oh, we all need to be the same. That's like fascism and communism. And we see how that works out. Like it's that aspect of like sovereign individuals make up the strongest networks and the strongest communities. And I think it comes with this aspect too of like, Aquarian is also like this technological understanding. And so it's a component of like everything that's in this reality is a neutral. It's like it can be good, it can be bad. It depends on how you utilize it. Well, I think it's the same thing with like technology. Like I can see like the fear of like AI as artificial intelligence, but I also can see how it can become absolute intelligence, and you can really connect to like the source of wisdom through it. But it depends on like how we utilize it and how we kind of connect to it. And I think we've, when it comes to like networking, like we're supposed to do, we've let ourselves get played by like polarity and polarization. And that's why it's so targeted right now. It's the component of like no peace on earth right now. And they're breaking up any kind of relationship, and they're breaking it up so far apart because they need that pendulum to swing farther, because the matrix is crumbling. This whole false, like the whole like myth, like fantasy of the age of Pisces is coming undone. Like you can't really like scare people anymore with like, you're going to hell. Like it doesn't really work anymore, so that whole aspect of like, we've been in this like deep Pisces sleep, and now we're waking up to like Aquarius, which is like, like Aquarius is like the mad scientist, like the future, almost like the guy Doc from like Back in the Future. That's Aquarian energy. Like it's brilliant. It thinks in that unique kind of way. And so, yeah, I think it's really going to kind of come down to like how much we like stand up for our own authentic unfoldment and like honor even our own like personal relationship. It's something we've been talking a lot about. Is there's been some big transits with Aquarius and Aries. And those both start with an A, and there's a big connection there. Like if a zodiac sign starts with the same letter, you won't read about it in a book, but there's a connection there. Like Leo and Libra. Leo's like the ego in me. Libra's like the ego in you. Scorpio and Sagittarius, both serpent wisdom. Scorpio is like going down the spiral staircase into yourself to find like the internal aspect of God, or the source energy down that spiral staircase, the deepest parts of yourself. Where Sagittarius is like climbing the ladder of like philosophy to find that universal life force. You're going to find it on both ends, and like going one direction pushes you the other, but it's like the S and the S. It's like the old serpent wisdom. Aries and Aquarius is the alpha to alpha connection. Aquarius is like what's completely unique about you that can't be anybody else. Like when I think about Aquarian energy, I think about like Prince or like Jimi Hendrix. Like you can only like, nobody could be another Prince.
David Bowie.
Like, yeah, you can be Casino, but you're showing yourself as like, you're like imitating him, right? There can never be another David Bowie. It's authentic because he unfolded his patterning that was like so pure that nobody could mimic him. But like, so it's like that Aquarius is like really unfolding the DNA pattern and like really pushing it out, where the Aries is like standing up for yourself to do it. Like standing up to yourself for like, hey, no, this is how I get connected to source. And you can't tell me that I'm doing it wrong. And I'm not going to tell you you're doing it wrong. And I think that that's so important right now, is like this aspect of like, oh, I kind of use the example of like the yogi, in like Malibu being like, oh, I don't think that's the way to do it. Where like the monks in like, Eastern Russia could be like, we don't give a fuck. Like, we don't give a fuck. You can't tell us how we connect to source, and we're not going to tell you. That needs to be activated right now. Like we need to stand up for like how we personally get connected to that, because it's like, it's coming in really, really strong, especially after like these major transits that have kind of gone down, that have like kind of pushed that age of Aquarius into the next step, So age of Aquarius, it's like we'll see. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's like it's a teetering thing. We're either gonna, have that aspect, like where there's like this great awakening and we all elevate to the next level, or, back to Genesis and it's like back over in that whole kind of cycle. I think it's happened many, many times before. But yeah, and I think that's what like pulls us all together in this time, in this like unique spot of like pulling all of these like unique like perspectives, research,
I have a quick question for you. You were talking about people following the trads of social media and TikTok and everything like that. Do you think that's causing us is hindering us from making that connection on an individual basis? The copycats and everything else is, how can I say, making us disconnected to who we are too. The whole know thyself aspect of it.
Lynn, I think you're like 100% nailing that, because it's exactly what it is, because, especially at the end of an age like we find ourselves, like in the age of Aquarius, that universal life force is like, hey, I've already like been in a factory and like did like repetitive labor for centuries. I've worked in the farms. I've worked from the Stone Age all the way up to this point. I've got you to the spot that like stuff is automated. Like there's a component that like you don't have to like watch and like, raise your food anymore, where all your consciousness energy is going there. Your consciousness energy right now is for creativity and like personal unfoldment. And it's seeing us in this opportunity that we have that's like a playground. Like it's really should be like spring break, no parents, for like the unfoldment of yourself. And you're right. Like we're mimicking. We're like this aspect of like, presenting somebody else. And, it's like at the age that we're in with like moving into this Aquarius age, you're either going to be authentically yourself or you're going to be like the biggest poser in the world. Like there's no in between. Like it's really like you have to choose it. You're not going to be able to do that like mimicking. But yeah, it turns off because we become like robotic and we start to just, it's not even just like waiting for the trends. It's also waiting for permission to like what to believe in,
Right.
like that whole aspect of like, I just was like speaking about this, like I was the crazy guy at the Thanksgiving table 10 years ago because I was talking about like human trafficking and like, more than just Epstein. And then like all of a sudden, like people are reaching out to me and they want to talk to me about it because Anderson Cooper now said it was okay for you to believe this and they needed permission to believe it. It's like, that sounds like a daddy issue to me. Like you need permission from an authority figure to validate what truth is, even though like I presented this evidence to you 10 years ago and you're like, oh no, that's crazy. That doesn't fit my paradigm. And that's not what like the, Google told me when I was like, taking a crap today and reading my phone. So I can have something float and act like I'm really smart when it's just like, everybody's like reading the same crap messages. It's like, oh, you took a crap today too? And you read that same article? And people are like, yeah, I guess like there's like nanobots in the sky. And you're like, sweet dude, So yeah, I think it's a number of it. And somebody in the comment nailed it, like hive mind, like it's again, like the bees play this aspect. It's like that component of that high mind. And that aspect of us just like, again, surrendering what the whole table has been set for. Like this whole aspect of consciousness evolution has been set to table so we can like feast in this opportunity of exploring ourselves fully. And we're letting it kind of get away in this way of like just getting caught up by the carnal carnival, and it has lights, it's got music and stuff like this, and it's got games, but like all those games have shitty prizes. You know what I mean? Like it's that same thing. And it's like so funny because like we're at that spot too, where like the generation before is like trying to pass on that shitty prize. They're like, oh no, it's okay. It's a teddy bear that smells like piss, but like you got to do it. It's part of the process of being an adult. And you're like, I don't want the piss-filled teddy bear, like or the mortgage or like whatever it is, where it's like you got to get the college degree. Like it's just so funny how we don't even need prison guards here because it's like, oh, we prison ourselves.
Right. I think to boil it all down, I would consider the Aquarian age to be a digital tribalism, right? Mm-hmm. And you can either because one of the problems with Aquarius is you can get stuck in the fantasy, or you could be more authentically yourself. And so we're seeing people sort of bifurcate in those directions. you've got to remember to stay authentically you. And really, if you think about the cutting edge of technology, those are the people who are authentically exploring that creativity that comes from themselves. So there's this digital tribalism aspect, again, bringing the tribe together, that Pareto principle, like you were talking about, where you've got the 80% of the people following the 20% of the people. You're going to find that in all sorts of digital tribes. And I think the key is just to recognize it and to be able to move around where people are more authentic. I think more authentically human people are going to be far better for the coming age than, going back to the fake stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I see like a lot of accounts where, even to the point where these people are like twitching and speaking in tongues, and they got like a huge following, and you see, and it's unfortunate. I'm just gonna keep it real. It's mostly women. They're totally cheerleading and they do group things, and everybody's fucking falling on the floor, gyrating this and that. And it's just like, yo, like, what the fuck do you think's going on right now? Like for real, it's like you bought into someone's bullshit game, and now you're just mimicking it. Like you don't even know who the fuck you are because you're trying to be a duplicate of this fucking insane person that's got you worshiping them. Very weird.
Yeah, no,
spiritual
absolutely.
advisor.
Yeah. I noticed a few of them today, and I was like, "Oh, what the fuck is this?" Like, there's one or two I followed, like literally for shits and giggles, because I'm like, "This chick's a mess." But a couple other ones just showed up today, and I was like, "What the fuck?" It's fucking crazy. Sorry.
I have a quick question. Do you believe that it's the lack of knowing? This is in general. This is how I view it. The lack of knowing oneself is the reason why people are so easy to give their power over.
I think it's a huge part of it. I think it's that aspect of like, I think it like the knowing thyself, it all kind of, to me, it kind of comes down to like spiritual amnesia. Like we forget what we are. We forget like who we are. We forget that like I'm an embodiment of that universal life force, and you're an embodiment of that universal life force. And at the core, we're the same energy. And it's this aspect of like that component of like almost like remembering to remember, not to forget. It's like the aspect that we forget who we are. And we have these processes of like falling back into human. And it's when you're in that human, we kind of get into that robotic thing. Cause like, with us all together, like, we could like understand that like, oh yeah, we have an eternal soul and we're animating an avatar going through this like spiritual construct of experience. And we could understand that there's like parts of ourself that like, there's a part of ourself that like remembers like our first memory. And then there's like that deeper part of ourself that like doesn't remember not remembering. Like it remembers like everything kind of thing. Right. And that's like that core source that's within us. It's just so easy to forget, like it's so easy to forget that like you are it experiencing it. You are the universal life force. Like, we did a whole episode once on hide and seek, and it was like, you're it chasing it, and then it's chasing you. And that's what this whole thing is. It's like this interplay of this like amazing kind of component that we forget about. And when you forget about that, you don't get that motivation to find that universal life force, how it's like expressing itself within you. You just get pulled down into the mud. And it really is like at this kind of component of like this age, it's like there's densification happening, and I think that's what's so like a really fascinating thing about like how the perspective of consciousness evolves over time. Like we think that the ancients viewed reality in like what was happening in their life, like through their lens, exactly like we do. But it's like, no, we've gone through a densification and materialism that like our world has become more structurized. It's become more like concrete. And so like when you look at things like this aspect of like how they even really like had a relationship with time in the past and like why they saw gnomes and things like that, it's because like that was part of their perspective. And it always goes through this like dilation process as you kind of go. It's almost like that idea of like why we even need to like break down spiritual concepts more and more as we go through an age, because we no longer can understand it in its wholeness. Like it was like people could see God in plants, they could see God in other people. It was undeniable. Like there was no room for atheism back then, because it was as a material of a world we're in, where we live in a very material world that's gone through like a lot of like calcination and densification, because of like collective trauma and even just like the cooling down of the process as it goes through time. And so, I think that that's like a big result of it, is people like don't understand these like ancient understandings of like, it's actually really great wisdom, because they're giving you a lens and a perspective that like you don't have. Like they could dilate time in the past different than we could. They could speed up moments, they could close it down, where we live in a very like consistent timeline that we're in right now. It goes through a process like everything else goes through an evolution. So I think it's like really comes down to like forgetting to remember who you are. And it's so simple, like that's another thing, is it's like, it's all so simple. Like when you get down to it, it's just like, oh, you are that universal life force, like animating itself in the pod, which is payable on death. And your soul is like recording everything. Your spirit is amplifying it. And then when it's time to go, the pod gets recycled back to Mother Earth, and she takes it and like recycles the clay, and the soul and the spirit move on to like, what comes next. And they move on without like all of the trauma and the hurt and the pain that you went through, because the body takes it. And that's like what the sacrifice of the body does. It goes on to do. So the soul and the spirit move on with like the wisdom. But we forget that stuff. We all forget too that we were probably all chilling before we put this headset on, and we were probably like in the spiritual realm, and we're like, oh yeah, it's like 10 minutes in the spot that we're in, and we're like, oh, we're gonna live like 300 lives, and like the person even told us like, you're gonna forget, and like, oh, we'll be fine. And now we're here like trying to remember, and so yeah, it's obviously like knowing thyself, and like knowing too the aspect of like I and I, which is like my favorite Rastafarian wisdom, which is like, I see the universal life force in you. It's the same as the one that's in me. It's like I and I, and it's how they approach everything. And you start doing that, the whole world changes. You stop like, there's no like, you don't put pain to somebody, because like their pain is your pain, and seeing that kind of connectedness. And so, yeah, at the core of it is like the component of like knowing thyself, but it really is. It's this like interesting aspect of like how that kind of unfolds. And two, like, I'm so sorry, Liam, because like I definitely am on like some kind of spectrum for like ADHD. So if I didn't like completely answer your question, I apologize. But yeah, if there's anything you want to, okay, great.
Feel right in here. Don't worry about it.
See, I knew I was in good company. That's why I was like, this felt like more like a homecoming when you asked me to be on it. I was like, oh, like I'm coming home. I'm coming.
Yeah, I think it was awesome when you told me. You're like, holy shit, dude! I just got to listen. I was like, what the?
No, I was just like second time listening to the Library Untold episode, and that guy is man. That guy's from a different timeline. He's unreal.
He's cool shit. He's got another topic for the show. Actually, he texted me since the show's been going.
Really?
Yeah, he wanted me to come on his show on Wednesday, and I'm like, fuck.
Dude, nice. Yeah, he's so
well,
rad.
I'm trying to schedule a different day, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. And two, I wanted to express that it's so awesome how like open you've created this space to bring on so many esoteric researchers and individuals. Like it's like, it's so important to like, again, make this kind of community and make this connection, because when I was first getting into like, even like alternative history and stuff like that, I would be like, there would be like these pillars of like my main teachers, and they would just all talk shit about the other one. It was just like, I don't want to name names, but I was always like, oh, I really like his work. And they're like, oh no, he took this from me. And it was just like, okay. And so like, yeah, I just think it's like so important that like,
yeah, that goes on a lot in ceremonial magic. I hate to say.
Oh my gosh, ceremonial magic. It's like you should just like, you have to sharpen your wand.
You're just laughing because
you jab somebody with it. Yeah.
She does.
No, for sure.
They say release the ego, but that's the hardest one to release.
Yeah, right. Gosh. For real,
yeah, no, absolutely. They hooked it up to like yeah, they amplify it, I think. Absolutely. Yeah, that whole aspect. But yeah, I just think it's so amazing of like how many people you bring on, and just even to like help people understand that like you don't have to like 100% agree with like everything that somebody says to like to work with them and connect with them. Like I'm 100% sure that nobody in the audience is like, I 100% agree with that new guy. Like, no way. They're like,
Oh,
this
yeah,
guy's
even with
crazy,
me.
you know?
Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, you
I
shouldn't
wouldn't
like
expect anybody to. I have some crazy thoughts.
exactly. No, absolutely. You know, and so like but I think it's so important because I think people are like, oh, you don't fill in like all of the bubbles. It's like it almost feels like a standardized test sometimes. They're like, oh yeah, no, you know, that's not gonna work. You said crystal
Yeah,
munching on our podcast. Like,
yeah.
that hurt our feelings.
It's missing the point because
Yeah.
it's supposed to be exchange of information and helping each other grow.
Yeah.
Because if we're all connected and we're all connected to the source, each of us have a piece of the puzzle. How are you going to solve the puzzle if we don't share?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's so interesting too, because it's like, once you share your piece of the puzzle, just by me like listening and taking it in, it like opens up a piece of the puzzle inside of me and brings it up. And then the thing is it might not happen in the immediate. It might be like 2 weeks down the road, you know, I have this like deep insight, you know, but it's like, you're always planting seeds that are going to have these like other, you know, other unfoldments. And I think that's also what's interesting about like working in the esoteric, because you're planting seeds in some people that like, they're not even going to like relate that was the seed that was planted years ago that they have that deep insight on. But I think that's why we do the work, you know, and that's why we have these kind of conversations. It's like, it's always planting seeds and helping.
Oh, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff I'm covering myself that I think later down the road will actually be more useful, because I think it'll become more of an accepted idea, especially with a lot of the science and physiology I cover. I do think eventually science is going to catch up a little bit more to magic and be able to explain a little bit more, you know. And I think, oh, see, I told you 3 years ago.
So funny.
Well, all of this is sort of pointing in one direction. So let's talk about being and becoming. So we've started out with sort of know thyself, be thyself, and then there's the alchemy of becoming and the phases that are changing sort of from one place to the next. So how have you integrated alchemy into your spiritual work?
Yeah, and you know, that was actually like what got us because it was kind of interesting when we started the podcast. It was right when like everybody was grounded with the whole thing that happened in like 2020, and I like just sold my food trucks like 20 minutes before COVID happened. It was like the craziest insight teaching ever. Like I just like woke up and it was like almost like in Forrest Gump when he like stops running. He's like, I think I'm gonna go home now. I just like called my business partner and I'm like, I think I'm done. And he's like, really? You know, I'm like, yeah, I think I'm done. Sold my shares. And then like that night I'm like eating at a restaurant and they're talking about like Corona on the TV. And I'm like, oh, that's the worst Mexican beer. And I'm like making fun of it. And the guy next to me is like, no, it's just like disease that's coming. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I was like so disconnected from it. Like being in the restaurants. And so I was just kind of like just chilling with nothing to do after like that component. Cause like there was no jobs or anything. And my buddy Eduardo was like, hey dude, you like the esoteric, why don't we start a podcast? And I was like, yeah, sure, man. But like, what's a podcast? Right. And so when it started, it was like, oh, we're just going to like do this for like the time being kind of thing. And like there's still people that like we grew up with that have like no idea we have a podcast. Like it's like majority of the people I know, they don't even know that me and Eduardo have this podcast. So it's this like interesting kind of thing. So we thought it was just going to be like, oh, we're going to kind of like have these conversations for a little bit. And then we like approached alchemy, because that was like my biggest subject at the time, and like the 7 steps of alchemy. Nice. And that is like what skyrocketed us. It was almost like I don't even know like what you call it, like the wave and the pattern of like social media. Like alchemy like was like hopping at that moment, and it just like caught. And then all of a sudden, like we have like downloads and people are like really digging the things. And so alchemy for us is like it's kind of like the genesis of the whole project, of like actually making it into this thing that's like kind of been like my career now that I do like natal charts and alchemical counseling through it. And alchemy is so important because it gives you an order of operations. It's like this is the process. Now it's going to be unique to you, and it's not going to have the same qualities and things like this, but like it's going to go in these steps. And you know, I realized in alchemy very early on, the first step is calcination, with this fire. Second step is dissolution. I was either burning in my own hell or I was like drowning in my own, like, great flood, 40-year flood. And I would just go back and forth between one and two. And it was like, once I saw that there was like a third and fourth step, you could start to like nurture this process and understand. But it gives you a map of meaning. It gives you an understanding of like the process you're in. And it allows you to like sit and like hold space for that process. Like, it's like, hey, I'm in the water sign right now. I gotta cry. Like, I'm gonna be like a little bit, like my little older self would be like, you're being a little bitch right now, but like, I gotta cry this out. Like, this is the time for water, and I need to release all that water. The time in fire, I gotta burn everything that's like, that's externally falsified in myself. And so that alchemical process, I think, is so important because it's just been something like Know Thyself that like was just kind of hijacked and made into like all these aspects of like the whole industry of self-development and self-help books. They're just like cherry picking and ciphering off of alchemy, and the thing is they only like highlight like two of the steps. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, it's I like your response. So I'm always down to hear what the Cardinals got to say.
No, I think you totally nailed it. I mean, I think even Headless got that right away too when I saw the look of his face. Yeah, you take like one or two of those things and you run with it. Like all of a sudden you got some new thing to start selling people, and it's like, even occultists. I'll throw like Crowley, Blavatsky in there, and other ones since then. A lot of the times they're just ripping off people from the past. People forgot about.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And I think that's what makes me so crazy when like people are like, even like nowadays, they're like, oh, you took that, like, that's like our information. It's like esoteric information is not yours. It's none of us. It's coming through us. And like, we're honored to be a vessel of it, but like, I don't own any of this, like I'll own maybe like something like I say on the podcast, like when I say like rat burgers or something, like that's not the esoteric. That's like shenanigans, right? Like I'll own that, but like, none of the information is mine kind of thing. It's just coming through us. And dude, you're so right. Because like, there's even like in astrology, like 90% of the astrology books are just like copying Linda Goldman's like book from the 1970s, and it's just like copy and paste. It's like, yeah, here's the keywords, here's the descriptions. And it's just like, wow, like it's just like almost like word for word. And you're 100% right. So I think that's what's so nice when you do get somebody who puts like an authentic lens on it, and kind of tries to like give that again, that like the unique relationship that they have with it. Rather than just like, yeah, kind of like repopulating and recopying,
When we were talking about, I guess like kind of like knowing yourself, or like Judith was even getting into maybe taking on other people's personalities, personas, or whatever, being influenced. You think like I often think from my own experience, and I wonder if like that was even something Crowley maybe understood. It was his experience. That when I came to think that I knew my will, when I believe I came to understand my will, there was nobody else that I was looking to anymore. Like I was going to be my original self in a sense. And I really don't think that really truly happened for me until I had an experience that made me think that I come to understand my will. So I wonder if that is even like was something of his to kind of give people like liberation or freedom in a sense.
Yeah. Gosh,
even from like other things or influence.
Oh no, absolutely. And the will is such a powerful thing, because it's like, it's either going to work for you or it's going to work against you. The will in like astrology is like represented by Mars, and like the story of Robin Hood is actually about that, because like Robin Hood only becomes a thief when the false king is in rulership, because the real king goes down to the Crusades. So the real king is gone, which is like your neocortex of like the left side and the right side of your brain, like in harmony. So like it rules from the triune brain. So you have like, it's like a hierarchy of like the highest point is ruling the middle point, and the middle point is ruling the lower point. It's like the aspect of the alchemical brain. Well, the false king is there. And so that's why he becomes a robber, and he starts to do it. Your will and your Mars energy will do the same thing. Like if your will and your Mars is not fighting for the true king, it's rebelling against the false king, which is like where you have. And so it will be accidents. It will be, struggles. It will be like arguments and stuff like that. It will be those times like you're in the shower being like, oh, I should have said this shit. And you're like, that's so stupid. Like, why am I doing that? That was 12 years ago. And like that kid is like, why? I'm not in the 8th grade anymore. Why am I thinking about that? Like, that's that kind of component. But that's exactly what Robin Hood is based off of. It's based off of like Mars being like, hey, I'm either going to serve you as like your ultimate soldier and your ultimate direction, or I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do as a soldier and like rebel against the false king, because like that's what I'm supposed to do. And it's like primal like that because it's Mars. It's like it doesn't take any aspect of like, oh, I'm sorry you're confused about this. It's like I'm an input output system. I'm either like fighting, I'm either like pushing forward so you can have a direction and you can step through doorways and like understand how you're going to move through this life and like, navigate it. Or I'm going to attack you, and I'm going to attack you in so many ways. And Mars can be brutal,
Definitely sounds like an Aries.
Aries, and we got so much of that energy going on right now. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm an Aries.
You're that makes sense.
Yeah, I think
That
so.
makes
Yeah.
total sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that I've never really been big for like always using I guess zodiac symbols to define people's personalities, but like because I know of all this shit going on in Aries in April,
Yeah.
I've been paying more attention to it. So you get a lot of these accounts that are always like doing these whole like personalized personality, and I was like, God damn, like I really do fit Aries, like fucking
Yeah.
I was like, that's kind of bad. Like,
No,
why?
it's interesting. No, it's interesting. And like, too, you got a sun sign, you got a moon sign, you got a rising sign. All the planets are in a sign. So it's you're a makeup of like all of them. But like Aries is like hayfire energy. So if you have like your sun sign in Aries, it can burn bright and it can get your like it
No,
can
I'm
get
a Leo moon and a Leo rising as well.
Oh, so yeah, you're fine. But that makes like complete sense with like how this like not only like how the show operates, but like how you're a badass when it comes to like what you say. Like it's I think it's really refreshing because like you've always like said how you felt and authentically kind of stood by it. And that like Leo moon is also why you showcase other people. And you bring them on the thing. It's not just like, oh, me. That Leo moon like really allows you to see like light and potential in others. And so, but yeah, you got some cool fire energy, man.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely.
No, absolutely. But yeah, I think too, like there's a lot of like, I hear a lot of like spiritual bypassing that comes through like astrology too, because people are like, it's okay if I cheat because like I'm a Scorpio, and you're like, nah, I don't think that's how that works.
God, yo, don't even get me going on that.
Yeah.
There's a whole like being promiscuous because I'm a Scorpio is just
Oh, sure.
I mean, an Aries to an extent could use the same fucking excuse.
Oh, for sure. Oh, anybody can. Like you always can like manipulate something,
I mean, technically, she's the female aspect of us.
No, for sure.
Scorpio.
No, for sure. Yeah. That's like as entertaining as also like I don't know if you guys noticed it, but like how the community is almost like addicted to healing. Like they never get out of the healing stage. Like it's just like, oh, I gotta heal. It's always like healing.
Yeah. Especially the people who are trying to sell you a cure to heal you.
Oh, of course.
Like I can help you heal your trauma, but it'll always be unresolved. So like, what the fuck am I going to do?
It's always going to be resolved. Yeah, and it's like you can come to this conference, but at the end of it, it's just like
you still have more trauma. Believe me.
Mm-hmm.
Like fuck.
Well, that's the thing too.
You're broken. Yeah. Absolutely.
We find a lot of people seeking out spiritual knowledge and spiritual healing when they're at their lowest point. And so we're not seeing them at their highest point because, at their highest point, they're not seeking out that sort of spiritual healing. So you kind of get stuck in that sort of healing cycle. They know who their target audience is. And so if you're constantly healing, you're constantly coming back for more. But there has to be that sort of transformation out of that healing process back to that victorious process.
Absolutely. No. And again, the headless, like that's, I think what you were like kind of brought up about the alchemical process earlier, because it like takes you through that and it guides you through that. And it gives you the season of healing. And then it gives you the season of rebirth, but yeah, I think it's one of those things that like, you can almost like get addicted. It's just like spiritual bypassing is just, it's almost like the Medusa head. Like, it's like once you cut it off, it's just like it grows two more and it gets like more complicated and things like that. So, and again, I'm like obviously not going to like ever throw stones at anybody in that kind of way, because I'm sure there's so much that I do in that kind of way, but just observing it and being aware of it, of like how that kind of unfolds. It's, it really makes those like mythologies like kind of come alive, and you're like, damn, like, am I on the Odyssey? Like, where am I in that book? You know?
The Odyssey.
We're all in it. I think that's the key that everyone needs to remember is like there doesn't have to be a main character to the whole thing. We're all kind of the main character, and unless we kind of recognize ourselves as being that valuable part of the bigger puzzle, we'll never really accept ourselves. And you know, that self-acceptance is a big part of the final process of turning into gold, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I can't remember who said it, but they brought it down as like, oh, you're in the Truman Show, and you're Truman, and you're everybody else. And I was like, oh, that's a great way to put it. Like, you know, you are it, and you're also playing the character of somebody else's aspect, you know? And, but yeah, you're it, you're Truman, and you're everybody else that's involved in it. And like, I think that's like exactly like kind of represents like what you were just kind of saying and like understanding that.
Right. It's a big recycling game, but I think once people can start to handle that, they can start to handle each other a little bit better. And that's where we should be headed, you know? It's like it doesn't always have to be constant conflict. You are going to have conflicts arise, but how you deal with that, how you react is going to be the thing that defines who you are.
Different. Yeah.
And that takes growth, which is something that most people don't want to do because they're afraid that's going to make them put them outside the circle of the collective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then again, that goes back to wanting to pretty much mimic others and not being your true self sometimes.
There you go. Vicious cycle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think too, because it's like, you know, I think again too that like the aspect of like spirituality in the beginning is like cupcakes and rainbows, but like you don't go into spirituality to make your life easy. It's like it's not gonna like you're starting to notice this reality, so this reality is gonna start noticing you. It's gonna dilate it, you know, and when you're on autopilot and you're like, you know, really whispering with like that component of being an NPC, well, like the reality's not noticing you. It's not dilating your experience. It's giving you this kind of component of like, oh, you're just a cog, you know, but once you start waking up, it starts waking up, you know, and I think that's what's so unique about it. Like even with like numbers and stuff like that, like getting into numerology and gematria, you start noticing numbers and numbers start noticing you, and they start showing up like everywhere, you know, at all moments, you know, and it is that interesting thing of how this is such a, you know, a input processing output system. It's like what you put out gets processed and it's received back to you, and it kind of just keeps that loop going. Yeah, just so interesting of like how that path kind of unfolds.
In some ways, I think we're back to it because where Pisces started, you know, they kind of had to get rid of the alphanumeric Koine language, right? Because that was seen as being some sort of witchcraft. And now, in the age of Aquarius, we're back to it with all of this numbers being letters with binary code, right? So it's almost like there's almost no way around these kind of cycles of history when it comes to numbers and letters and how things pop out to the individuals and how things are determined through a society. I see everybody with the conspiracy podcasts always pointing out these numbers like 33. Oh, I see a 33. I see a 33. But there's very little understanding of what these things actually mean and how they apply to everybody. And figuring that stuff out could be a lifelong process. But what are your thoughts on numerology?
Oh, you know, I think it's like, you know, it's kind of the same thought I have on astrology. It's like, hey, this can be the prison cell, or this can be like, it can help you like liberate from the prison. It's a neutral kind of field. I think that numbers, though, the study of numbers has amplified all my other studies in like a rate that like I never understood. And it was kind of like the last subject I got into. It was like starting alchemy, tarot, astrology. And I finally made my way to numbers, and like learning numbers made me such a better astrologer. It made me so much better with the tarot because it's like, it's the lowest common denominator of like this frequency and this kind of vibration. And it takes it down to like that language of the universe. But like, kind of like, I kind of see it as that component of like, almost like a Gnostic idea, like the matrix in the demiurge is coded in numbers, but there's also an organic aspect of numbers unfolding. And that's just like, the aspects of nature, you know? So yeah, I think numbers are so powerful. And man, when you just connected Headless, when you connected the aspect of like taking away the alphanumeric languages, I think that has such a big deal to do with like why Pisces people were so deceived, and like we're able to have this thing of like all these variations of like Bibles getting rewritten and rewritten. You know, it was like they lost the quality aspect of like finding actually like number value to words, and it became separated. And man, I never even thought about that, but that's you're completely right. That dissolved in the age of Pisces.
Well, it occurred to me you've got this number 40 reoccurring over and over again in the Bible, right? 40 is where you take the phi ratio and divide that into 65, and 65 is this number of completion, right? So you're completing the cycle at 65 when you divide, or 64 when you divide that by 1.6, you get 40, which would be the number of struggle. And we even see today. Netanyahu say we've had 40 days of fighting in Lebanon. It's like he's calling back to the same kind of alphanumeric codes that are stuffed right in the Bible. And it's always that 40-day cycle that is, or 40-year cycle, or all of these things that have to do with the suffering in this certain amount of time, and then we're coming out of that. And so it becomes a real easy way of encoding these same stories over and over and over again.
No, absolutely. And there's like, I don't know if you guys have ever gone like down the rabbit hole of like some of these like gematria decoders and stuff like that. And they're brilliant. Like, I don't know if you guys ever like been on the tool like Gematrinator, which is a gematria calculator. Really amazing tool. And like reading his blog, it's just like kind of blows your mind in those kind of ways. But like, it's really fascinating though, because like they are coding our reality with numbers. Like why they're going to get the Super Bowl to end on a certain number. It's because you're all going to talk about that, look at that number, and you're going to activate it for like whatever they're like growing in the aspect in the future, And I think that that's also like this awareness that like there's a synthetic aspect of gematria and there's an organic aspect of gematria. And I think people confuse them as the same thing, and it's just like, no, if it's got a lot of rituals, if it's got a lot of actors involved, and it has to like be built up over time, that's a synthetic one. And over time, even though they might collapse the wave, it will kind of unfold as like a mistruth. Like it was like, oh, that wasn't true. Where like organic is, it follows the Fibonacci. It follows all of these things that you're talking about. Like, organic always unfolds and blossoms on the right day, because it follows that like patterning. And I think that that's like a huge thing, because I think people look at this like aspect of like gematria and they're like, oh, it's the wrath of God. And you're like, no, it's the demiurge like maintaining the matrix, but that universal life force, like that true source, will speak to you through numbers as well, because it will speak to you through everything, right? But like it's that like fascinating kind of component of like again, I think it's just like really like connecting in an Aquarius kind of thing of like connecting these like concepts together. Like, you can't really understand gematria anymore in isolation without understanding like a little bit of astrology, a little bit of like, Gnosticism and things like that. Like, I think that's almost what we're supposed to be doing too, is like networking all of these things together, because like, 200 years ago, even 100 years ago, you wouldn't have access to know like what a Buddhist monk was studying or what like sidereal astrology was, because you would only have access to like the astrologer that was like in your hometown. That's all you were expected to know. Well, now we're in the age of Aquarius. It's like, yeah, it's like, again, it's like there's no borders. It's like you have like no curfew and like no backyard that you have to
distance
play.
Isn't an issue anymore. Yeah, distance is fun.
Well, this is something I love to bring up. This is Benford's Law. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but this is what the IRS uses to find out if you're cheating on your taxes. Because natural numbers have a certain amount of frequency when they show up, right? So the highest frequency of ones in the first position on any number is going to be at about 32% higher than the other frequency. So you can actually plug any number, 30.1%. You can plug any number into Benford's Law and figure out if it's organic or if it was humanly made, because humans don't really know about Benford's Law. So if you're getting natural numbers, it's going to probably have a high percentage of probability to go along with Benford's Law. This is like the natural qualitative number law of the universe that I think a lot of people don't know about. But what you're saying is actually, really correct. There are qualitative aspects to numbers that a lot of people are just missing because they think, numerology, this is just crazy talk. But it's like in mathematics, they accept that there's a certain qualitative nature to these numbers, and most numerologists don't even know about this. It's right there. So you can actually tell when they're trying to encode stuff and when they're not by applying all these numbers to Benford's law.
You're nailing it right now too. It's like John, like there is this huge aspect of like gematria and numerology. They're so like right brain in this aspect. They don't look at like number theory in this left brain, which is the missing component, because like, even like exactly what you're saying, like understanding and like just investigating like how a number behaves, like a prime number can only be divided by itself and 1. So like on days that the gematria, like those equations add up to like 3 prime numbers, that's the day that stuff's going to pop off. Like it's like energy can't be stored that day. So you might have a breakthrough that day. You might like somebody might be argumentative and like snap at you. It throws off, like that's like when scientists will make breakthroughs. It's on prime number days. And I kind of use the example of like it could be a good thing, like you like find like $10 on the ground when you're like walking, you're like rad, or like you can get like mono from your friends like Powerade. Like it's like, oh, that sucks. Like that was weird that happened. It's like prime number days, where a number like 64 or a number like that has a lot of factors to it, that's got a lot of density to it. So energy can go on top of it because it distributes it to the factors, so it can hold better. So those are days that people aren't going to pop off. That's like a day to like, it's going to be like energy is going to be like more mellow and kind of things. But it's like, you're right. It's just like how that number operates. But it's really fascinating because like some numbers will like push numbers beyond the line, and some numbers like hold you at that line, and they'll like anchor you. It's like you can even see sports scores, like football teams that get stuck on 20 points. A lot of times they'll like end with 20 points. They can't get off it. Where if they get on 17, it shoots them either to 20 or 24, because it's like numbers have this component of like physically happening. And I think that that's a huge part of like numerology and gematria that like has to almost be understood. Like even when they were doing like the Declaration of Independence, on the 26th day of that process, they had everything that was going to be in the Declaration of Independence. So like, okay, we're not going to add anything and we're not going to take anything away. This is what's going to be added, because the 26 is the number that like you set boundaries. Just like there's 26 letters in the alphabet. It's like, okay, these are the glyphs that we're going to use to create every word in this language. We're not going to add a word. We're not going to add a letter. We're not going to take a letter or word away. It happens on the 26th day. That's when you like finalize stuff. And then on the 32nd day, that's when you make the announcement about it, and it's like, again, these numbers have like this like very familiar understanding. And it's like not even to the step that you're mystifying them yet. You almost want to like demystify them first, understand them as a container, because in that container, that mystical energy will come in and, fill it up with like the real good esoteric good that you're not going to find in a book, kind of like creating that structure in that container. So it brings in that like inner understanding that like we're all kind of starting to generate. But what you just brought up, I've never seen that chart. I'm sure like, my taxes would definitely be probably synthetic on that one too. But like, that was amazing. I've never seen that, but it's brilliant. It's like remarkable when you really start to see this, like this operation and how it really organically unfolds.
Right. It's like cheating when you know about it, because then you can just get a Benford's law generator and just make the random numbers you want to plug it in there,
Hey, it's like power to the mind. You know what I mean? Like it's that component, but you're so right there. I think you probably just like saved a lot of people from,
I hope guys, Benford's law, get it.
Yeah, just go out and get it. That's awesome. No, that's amazing.
Absolutely.
It's some wild shit, actually. First time he pulled that up and told me, I was like, what the fuck?
That's crazy. I've never even seen that, but it makes total sense.
Right. And it fits within the number line that we have. Other other systems with other base numbers aren't going to have the same kind of frequencies, but we have a base 10 number sequence, which means that you're going to have these natural distributions of numbers. But if you think about it, having a different base of number sequences like the Aztecs had, where they have base 6 numbers, right? Some numbers are base 12, other numbers are, all of these other things. So it's when you repeat these cycles, that's when you start to have these distributions of numbers. And this is why the energy distribution kind of makes sense when you're talking about how these different numbers have a certain energy or a frequency to them. There's a qualitative aspect to numbers that a lot of people are just passing over.
No, absolutely. Man, and even just going down that rabbit hole of different number systems like base 8, base I forget what culture was base 8, but when they actually counted the spaces in between their fingers. And that's how they would count and things like that. Like even the component of counting, because like the Sumerians could count to 60 on one hand because they would count the spaces of their fingers, and then they would count as many times as they did it on this hand. And that's why 60 is the number of completion for them. But that aspect is it really does change your relationship to oh, this changes reality. Like when whatever your base system is, it changes the reality. Just like a calendar, like when we switched to the Gregorian calendar, changed reality. It's like a program in the reality. Well, base number systems, of course, it's the base. It's what's going to create everything is going to blossom from that.
Well, these numbers don't just exist in quantities outside of the mind. They also exist in quantities inside of the mind. That's one of the main factors of this language. And when they say man is the measure of all things, I mean, how long is an inch? Well, it's about that long, right? How long is a foot? Then you've got all of these different aspects to the human body. As above, so below. There's an aspect of how we measure things really does determine the outcome of different events.
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask you, Daniel.
Yeah, what's up?
What do you get into, ritual, ceremonial stuff at all? Or no?
Yeah, no, and definitely, that was probably I'm very studious into all ritual schools, because it really did. It expanded my understanding of how reality works, especially planetary hours, color correspondences, and things like this. And so, I would say that I have a really interesting component with my rituals because they're very fluid. And it's kind of what's calling me at that kind of time. But I'm very dilated into how the magician views the day of the planetary hour, the gematria of the day, and kind of calculating what the pressure system is going to be like and what it could kind of afford and how you could kind of navigate it. But for sure, it was it was some of the deepest understanding of how I understood how this construct operates was ceremonial magic, how it presents stuff was I remember reading about a magic ritual, and it was just if you're out of money, don't do the ritual on a Thursday because you're just going to expand that debt with Jupiter. You want to do it on Venus on a Friday because that will bring money in, and then next Thursday you bring it into Jupiter because it'll expand that positive account. We'll expand it on the negative account. That blew my freaking mind. I was just oh my gosh, that's amazing of how these correspondences work. And so in the regards of my own kind of magical ceremonies and things like that, it's been phases in my life that it comes in. And it's really interesting because I'll have a relationship with Druidism for a season, and I'll be oh, I'm this Druid. And then all of a sudden I'm in this Buddhist kind of approach to kind of thing. So it's very fluid in that kind of way. But I what I really kind of try to do is make every routine into a ritual. So if I'm brushing my teeth, at the same time, I'm also brushing out anything nasty I've ever said about myself, and then spitting it down the sink and watching it go away. Alchemically, amplifying the moment, because I'm already exerting the energy of brushing my teeth. It's why not just alchemicalize it and do some self-growth through it by taking the moment and really just amplifying it with your attention and your awareness. So that's something that I always try to do is find out little ways of how I can kind of at any moment take in kind of an alchemical lens to the situation to kind of assist with that self-growth. But yeah, I definitely I definitely have been like, went through all the processes, you know, where I was like, you know, went to the magic store and I bought like all the candles and like, you know, all of these kind of things. You know, we have like these yerberias here, which are like Mexican Santeria stores. And
Oh,
like,
nice. Awesome.
there's like, yeah, I was buying stuff I shouldn't have been
Make
buying.
you
Like,
go
the
to
lady behind the
botanicals all
counter
the
was like,
time.
"You're an idiot. Like, stop." And I'm like, "I like this thing," and she's like, you know, so yeah, definitely had that you know, that component with it. And yeah, it's like, I think it's like one of those things that like it's kind of like, depending on like the time of the season that I find myself in, it's either like a huge part or it's like not as big of a part. But the utmost respect for it. And it's like one of the things that I just like absolutely love to explore, because it's like it's one of those things that like it brings in insight to things you didn't think it was going to bring insight in. It's like always a surprise after you like work through like a magical book of the the value and the gold that you extract out of it. It's like, it's not like, it's always, for me, when I kind of go through that work, it's always like it wasn't what I expected. And I guess that's kind of how magic works too. You know what I mean? Like, it happens when you least expect it, and it happens in like the ways that you least expect it. But I know that you guys, like, I know you've spoken about your relationship with it. Is that something that's still pretty prominent for you?
No, I have thought about it, but I haven't done much of that in a minute. But it was huge for me for years.
Yeah.
It was, you know, every morning and night,
Yeah.
almost. For the most part, yeah. The lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram. You know, I think if you're into like the Lima or the Golden Dawn, that's just going to be probably a practice that you do consistently anyway.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I did that, and then I was really big with the hexagram ritual as well. You know, Lash or was the middle pillar. I used to incorporate that a lot as well.
Yeah, and I think the middle pillar is like, you know, especially in the time we find ourselves in, like, I think that's so important to find that, like, you know, that spot and that center spot. And I, you know, I kind of think too, we're at that stage of, even with like magic, it's kind of calling for its own personal relationship with us. Like, we went through that process, and it's like, it's, again, you kind of have to like, you have to like understand the foundations before you can like kind of break out of them. You can't just like, you know, like, again, Jimi Hendrix didn't like walk into Guitar Center and bust out Purple Haze like upside down and break the rules of the guitar. He had to learn the fundamentals, and then he was able to break the rules of it, you know? And so I think that that's kind of happens with magic too. It's like, you have to go through that initiation. You have to learn the fundamentals, but then it kind of starts to speak to you and like, hey, this is how it independently works for me. And I think there's like a space to kind of like move towards that. Or it like really pulls you into like a certain school of direction that's like, no, this is like the focus of how it's going to work, or it blends them together. But I definitely think there's like an internal process there that we go through, but so important to get that foundation in first, because yeah, I mean, that could be a slippery slope, you know, very, very quickly.
Anybody have any questions or anything? No. Just wanted to make sure before I keep asking. Yeah. What is I know you're into astrology and stuff, and you mentioned planetary. Are you into like Kabbalah? I mean, I would assume, right?
Yeah.
Kabbalah,
oh, absolutely.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, you know, and it's really is. It's kind of like I'm kind of just like a smorgasbord when it kind of comes to the esoteric. Like I
think that helps though.
Yeah, I think it totally helps. You know, I think it totally helps because, again, it's like when you almost like switch the modalities, not only does it give you like insight on the other one, but like I find that it's like really important that like if I'm like really into the tarot and studying the tarot, and then I move to astrology, my consciousness can now start like putting that and storing it in my subconscious, because the tarot, because my attention is not on tarot anymore. So like my active consciousness isn't like messing with it. So it actually like goes to my subconscious, and it can start storing it. And I go to that pattern of studying the astrology. And then like when I go back to the tarot, all of a sudden I've got like a completely new lens to it. You know, I think that that's like such an important part of the process, is like not staying hyper focused on something, because like then your active consciousness is always manipulating it. And it doesn't give the capacity to like impregnate the subconscious for like a greater understanding, or like a birthing that could kind of come from that. So I think that's been pretty important for my process. And then also like it's I just think it's all ill shit. Like, I just love it all. Like, there's nothing I find in the esoteric that I'm like boring. Like, it excites everything about me, all of it. And so whether it's like, if somebody's like, hey, like, you want to read a book on voodoo? I'm like, bet. Like, let's do it right now. And they're like, no, you don't have to do it right now. And I'm like sitting down in the middle of a store, like reading it. So I think there's just like kind of like this like curiosity and like almost like this like energy force that it activates. Because like, I could be like, I was like before the esoteric, I kind of felt like I was Eeyore from like, I don't know why I'm doing so many Winnie the Pooh references. Like, I'm like talking like Tigger. I'm making a reference to Eeyore. I made a Winnie the Pooh reference earlier. I don't know. There's something coming on with that, but I'm almost like that. I'm almost like, if I don't have something that's like sparking my aspect there, I'm like, I don't know what heroin is, but I feel like this is what heroin feels like. It's just like there's no energy there. And so, when I find something that gives it to it, it's just like, hey, let's eat. So yeah, the Kabbalah is just like such a deep mystery. Yeah, opening up like even just like the Hebrew language and understanding that whole component of like, because that's kind of what like gematria is based off of and things like that. Yeah, it's always a subject that I'm like exploring like deeper and deeper. But I would say that like Kabbalah is the one that I haven't presented on the podcast, and that's like just merely because like my Hebrew is shit. Like, it's just like so bad. I'm like, I got a Hebrew name, Daniel. And like, I'm like, it's like, I can say bar mitzvah, but like, that's it. Like, it's like so funny. And I just stumble over them. Like, there's like, yeah, it's like, it's really funny. Like, I'll avoid certain rules. And like, there's even like this like philosopher that I like love. And I won't even quote him because I'm like, I'm going to mess up that name on the pod. And like, I just butcher it. I'm like, good God. And then I try to recover and it just gets worse and worse. So like, yeah, I think that's it. But like, yeah, I find the Kabbalah, it's endless, it's got so much good information there.
We do a show on Aleister Crowley's Kabbalah on Tuesdays. Oh, nice. And when we hit those Hebrew words, man, we hit those Hebrew words hard.
I gotta jump in on this show. I need to be a fly on the wall on that show.
Oh, yeah. Oh God, I'm just like, oh fuck, I don't even want to try this shit.
Right, yeah. We skip a lot.
Hey, it's great. I could have learned that shit for free when I was in prison, which was crazy. And I almost took it because you could have learned. There was so many fucking, I don't know what it was. This prison was packed with Jews, and they actually taught Hebrew. And I could have taken that shit for free, and I almost did because for some reason I was like, oh, this guy. I just for some reason thought it would come in handy. Like I was already starting to get into occultism already. Now I regret it because like I would have been around people who spoke the shit as well.
Oh, man, that's like the way to do it.
Yeah. Because even one of the guys in my room was Jewish. He's like, I'm telling you right now, you want to learn Hebrew, this is the time to do it because you're surrounded by Jews.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I was even trying. There was like a deli down the road, and I was like hanging out there like way too long. And they're like, "You're creeping me out." And I'm like, "I just want to hear you guys talk." And they're like, "Get the hell out of this deli." Like, so that aspect of like, yeah, immersing yourself in it would be.
Yeah, no, I regretted that. Like, fuck, I probably would have picked it up in like a few, 6. So one guy was like, "Oh, in 6 months you'll be doing fine." Like,
oh, sure.
Yeah.
Well, if you like Greek, you'd be surprised to know that actually gematria comes from the Greek Koine language.
Isophras, yeah.
Yeah, isopsophy. And so all of their letters were actually numbers, and this is really where the Hebrews got it from, was from the Greek. This is why they call it gematria, which is the Greek word. So it's if you're into Greek, learning Greek will give you the keys to unlocking, all of that isopsophy that's all over the Greek language. I mean, this was a big part of it too.
Absolutely, like that ancient Greek language, and yeah, the Hebrews had that ability to kind of take some information and claim it as their own. That seems like a common theme that happens, But yeah, that ancient Greek language too. Like the oldest book of Revelations is in that ancient Greek, and it reads like in such an important way. Like there's little translations there that have got lost in time that give you so much more insight on what's being presented and things like that. So yeah, that would be amazing. There was like a YouTube channel where they would just speak it and you could just listen to it and you could feel the vibration. Like you could feel the vibration of those ancient languages that they're manifesting and creating form in a way that's like really, really powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm a big advocate of learning Greek, so I need to get better at it myself. But, I think that's something that's going to be important. If you think about the alphanumeric quality of language, having an understanding of that and understanding the energy of it and how it's transferred and the different ways that it is. Half of our words come from Greek anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's like all the stuff. You were saying like you were upset you didn't like learn like Hebrew in prison. I didn't pay attention to like any of the things when we were teaching like the prefix and the suffix, like the words and stuff like that. Like having like a understanding of that would be so valuable. Those foundations, it's like so interesting as you kind of come back to it and you're like, this is crazy. Like it is. There's so many Greek aspects. And when you really get into the etymology of the word, you're really getting into like the deeper understanding of like what energy that word actually brings like to this construct.
Yeah, I even covered one time in a gematria series that I did that there was even like certain like books were being translated. I don't know how they did it. I mean, I found it from reputable sources. I don't think it was bullshit, but it didn't really explain how, because that really interested me. That sometimes they would like the way they translate other languages sometimes into another language, they would use gematria.
Oh, that
was wild.
That would that would make sense. Like it would make sense to like carry that vibration over. And that's what's like actually like interesting about like English gematria is because you have to like check it because like does the number actually like correlate to the word, where like in Hebrew it's very exact, and like in Greek it's going to be very exact of like, hey, those numbers match the energy of that word. Where in English you have to kind of like check it because it could be it might not have as much weight and density as like a calculation where numbers like 33 and 47, like you say, that always get repeated and stuff like that. Those ones pretty much there's like a correlation to those, and that's again why we see people getting freaked out about them, when really it's just like, oh no, that's just very coded.
Right. Well, they tried to do that with the Egyptian language, right? They were there wasn't a lot of good translations back in the 1900s, so we've got a lot of Egyptian texts that have to be retranslated because they were trying to do it with gematria back then because they didn't know what these words meant. And now that we have those translations, they have to go back and redo it all again with a lot of these ancient Egyptian translations. They thought, well, maybe there's something alphanumeric about this stuff, but no.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Okay. Oh no, that would make sense. Yeah,
there was I even think like most languages are even designed like the number system and the letters came together. That's even another thing that I've, there was a time, I think, I forgot what day, I don't know, Headless might have been there, maybe not. It might have been like New Year's Eve, and like I was having some people come on, and like somebody was like kind of not for gematria, and we're trying to explain like it's just, languages, started with the letters and numbers like equating. Like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, I don't think most people realize that.
Right.
Or how much, and you know what the one thing is too, which is unfortunate, is that sometimes I think because like you'll get people who are not using gematria but saying they are. You know what I'm saying? Like they're actually kind of using the 1 to 9 or the 1 to 10. They're not really using gematria. Well, I guess what I'm getting at is you also have people out there who are doing a lot of dumb bullshit with numbers that really don't mean much of anything. And it kind of makes it look stupid, unfortunately.
No, for sure. You can make it look so many ways, and I think that's why it's like so important to have like a structurized system going into it, because like,
well, like I keep it real. I mean, whatever. I've entertained people numerous times. When you're gonna run 20 fucking ciphers on one fucking word, of course it's gonna hit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, Jesus Christ. Like, but like the shit. I think was good that me and Headless are doing it. Showing from Crowley about how much it is incorporated. Even like in his Book of Lies, if you were to go through his Book of Lies, the commentary is for the gematria. Like the shit's ciphered. It's basically telling you this book is ciphered.
It's ciphered.
And then you go and see the vision and the voice. that's in I forgot what library. It's at some college or some university in Austin, Texas, to go look at. He hand wrote it before it was edited and all that. And so like his notes are in there. And like normally it's kind of like one page, if I remember correctly, it was like his notes on what was now written on the next page to be done. And I mean, you see him doing math constantly with phrases, words. So like whatever's written over here, don't take it at face value.
Right.
You know, like there's times where you see him doing the math for Rose and he's implicating her, the girl in his life sometimes. But if you're doing the math, like it wouldn't matter the math. If that's who you're talking about, it should just be that. Mm-hmm. But if you're doing the math, it's obviously not. It's ciphered.
Right. That's a big problem we keep running into with 777 is it's obviously ciphered. And I don't think we're getting the full meaning.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of ciphering in his shit. So it's just like, I'm sure he wasn't the only one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I always my phrase with Crowley is like it's almost like the Mario, like, oh, that's the Crowley, because like it is. It's like it's its own kind of shenanigans, almost like that's the Crowley. Like I've been reading this book completely wrong. Like like early on, you're like, oh, you get the Book of Lies, and you're like, oh, you like go home, you read it cover to cover, and you're like, what the hell did I just read? And then you like find out later that you're like,
that's what.
Yeah, you got played. And like all of it, like it's like that aspect of like such brilliant stuff, and then people will be like, but like what about his actions? Like it's like no, it's just like that's a Crowley. Like you got to like do by his words rather than like his actions sometimes. It's like he's just such an interesting individual. So like especially taking on that work in like a group setting like you guys are and putting minds together on it, I think is the way to approach it. But man, it's an enigma. It is. I can only imagine.
Yeah. And I could definitely see losing yourself in that shit as well, too.
Right.
Yeah, there was one time when I was going pretty hard with it, like on true crime shit, and it just started getting like weird. We're just like repeating numbers and stuff. It was like almost like it was just like the fabric to just like horrible shit, like some sort of like code to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I think I'm done for a minute.
Yeah, it's like it's like such a, even when I'm like explaining it to my friends, like I feel like I'm like running up to them at a gas station with like a styrofoam cup of coffee and like a cigarette, and like I'm just like yelling at them about numbers, like
you're like, you haven't slept in a week, have you?
Yeah, exactly. Like you go, it's like one of those things you can sound like crazy very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And then you just start like speaking faster. You're like, no, you got to understand. And then like you're freaking them out even more. Yeah. Did you guys ever see the movie? Like, I think it was Pi. It was like back in like the 90s. Did you see that?
A long time ago, yeah. I don't remember.
A long time ago. That was about gematria. I need to kind of see it now through this lens, because as a kid, I was just like, what the hell is this guy talking about? What is this movie in black and white? Like, what did he just do? But like, now I kind of think about it and I reflect back on it. It was kind of about that. It was kind of like losing yourself in that space, and like, yeah. So it's like, it is fascinating. It is one of those things you kind of have to like take with a discipline and approach, because like you take the, you take the slip and slide down to numbers, you're going to find yourself in a very confusing place.
Right. Well, it's the quality and the teleology of it. So you've got this meaning aspect that is sort of right at your fingertips and yet outside of your reach, So you kind of find this over and over again with numbers and trying to find meanings and all the rest of these things. It's like, where's the actual pattern? And what I think is most important is actually finding how the pattern affects you first. Right? You got to know how these numbers are affecting you and how you relate to them. And if it's not part of that personal pattern system that you've sort of developed by looking around at the world around you, let it go. Right?
Gosh, that's huge. But it all loops back to know thyself, not propping their own show with a name, but like, it's so interesting. Like all of these components from like the magic, the numbers, all of it. It all kind of comes down to that, like that relationship with that internal compass inside and that understanding. But that's a great point. That's a great point. Checking it in with yourself before you go on a external rabbit hunt.
Absolutely.
I have a hypothetical question for you, because when you were discussing, when you get hyped up and you hit the point and you're trying to explain it to your friends and they don't get it necessarily. where would you guide them to start?
Oh, I just start speaking louder and I start pointing my finger out. No, that's such a good question. And that's like you just start with like making a relationship from like 0 to 9. Like it's really interesting. Like all you need to know is 0 to 9 because all numbers are going to just be a makeup of that. Like if you see the number 298, well, you understand the number what 2 means. Now the number 9 and the number 8, this is like an equation, but you read it like a story. You read it from left to right, and it's going to tell you just like that. So you start with the fundamental and the basics. And when it comes to like numerology, like stuff from like the 1890s to 1910 hits. Like there's a couple books, and I'll share them because they're all they're in the public domain now and stuff like that. I'll send them to each and one of you guys. There's like the mystic value of numbers. There's the 4 basic ideas of numbers. These will give you such a good structure to build off of and an understanding. And then again, you could get deeper and deeper, but getting that strong seed is so important. Numbers is one of the ones that you just like slow and steady wins the race. It's just like, hey, just go in that kind of way because you can lose your balance very quickly and kind of go again on this like mystical illusion rabbit hole. But if you take that structure like in that kind of way, but you kind of go down from like 0 to 9. And honestly, like before I even open a book, I would just sit with myself and be like, what do I know about these numbers? Like, you know more about numbers than you think you do, because it's like, like maybe astrology, you didn't have those terms and you had to like make a relationship with those terms. You've had a relationship with numbers. They've just been more of like emotion and they haven't had so much meaning to them. But like your inner child and like your curiosity as a child saw these components about these numbers. And so it's really interesting. Like I would almost like say like before it is like, just sit and like write the numbers 1 from 9 and like think about what that is, like even the component of like a 1 is like pointing the pen onto the paper. And then 2 is like making a line. And then 3 is like a triangle. So now we have like aspect of actually a creation, 4. And even just thinking about like, 4, form, 4, it's like structure, you know what I mean? And like all these kind of components, like opening it up in that kind of way. And then just exploring it and just like taking it in that way. But it's a really beautiful subject because like we were kind of talking about it. It's like, once you start noticing numbers start noticing you. And you really do get this unique kind of relationship with them.
Oh, yeah. I've noticed certain numbers repeatedly every time I travel.
When you travel?
Yeah, when I travel, especially like if I'm flying, certain numbers, if I'm drawing, it's a different set of numbers I always notice. It's fucking weird. Yeah. But did anybody have anything else? We're a little bit over an hour and a half. Maybe we might wrap it up here.
It's a good spot. I think we went all the way around the circle and came back to know thyself. So that's a perfect episode.
That's a win. That's a win. But again, too, like I wanted you're going to close out the show, but this has been so amazing sharing space with everyone. In the comments that were flying through. Again, just blowing my mind. Like it literally like taking my mind off like so many things that everybody participated with was so awesome. So it's such an honor to be like in this kind of space with each and every one of you guys.
It's funny, at 9/11 I literally had someone text me about my chat actually. Like you have a very interesting chat on your channel. I was like, yeah, some very interesting characters in there.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you very much for coming on. No, I definitely had a blast. I'll have to get you on again, man, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always good to be able to slip a whole bunch of different ideas and topics with somebody.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like now we're all connected because like, the Know Thyself podcast, like it's always just been like concepts and we've never had like guests on, but we're kind of like expanding out and like trying to like open up a space like that as well. So we'll all have so many conversations and we'll all be breaking bread in so many different ways.
Nice. Sounds good to me, son. Definitely. Before we wrap it up and let you plug your show and your stuff again, Judith the Loon, what is going on? How are you?
This was a wonderful conversation. And Daniel, you have a lot, you dropped a little couple of gems there for me to research. So thank you for that. always a pleasure to be on with Headless and with Nick.
Yeah.
And you can find me at YouTube and X as the Loon and on speaker too. Thank you.
No, thank you for being here. I always appreciate it when you can jump on. And my man, Headless the Giant, what is going on, sir?
How's it going? You can find me on YouTube, on X, and on Instagram at The Headless Giant. And tomorrow we've got another trilogue coming at you with Ethan Indigo and Ricardo Calvario. So come by and check that out, 10 o'clock or 10:30 Central Time. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. No,
Nice,
awesome.
nice.
Again, so great to be on here. And this is Daniel, my second favorite host from the Know Thyself podcast. If you want to see the coolest guy in the world, that's the other host. His name is Eduardo. But yeah, Know Thyself podcast, the one with the sun, the alchemical sun, not the dude with the selfie in a ponytail. So that's not us.
Yeah.
But that's a good podcast too. But yeah, we're not much of the selfie kind of guys.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about, too. It's funny.
Do a nice selfie.
Yeah.
Nice stuff, my man.
Nice selfie. Oh, that was good. Thank you all again very much. I had a great time. That was a great talk. And everybody in the chat, that's what's up. I appreciated all the comments, all the ball busting and all that shit. It was a good time. Thank you very much. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.